The quantum engine hummed beneath Thalia's fingers as she made the final adjustments, her violet eyes reflecting the shimmer of the holographic diagnostics. Even after 3 years of captivity, her hands hadn't forgotten their craft. Commander Vex might have enslaved her body, but he couldn't erase 2 decades of quantum engineering expertise from her mind. The Drachnid officer stood behind her, his scaled arms crossed over his armored chest. "How much longer?" he demanded, mandibles clicking with impatience. "The calibrations require precision," Thalia replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Unless you want the engine to tear a hole in space-time and destroy your entire fleet." Vex growled but didn't argue. He knew her value. It was why he paid so much to acquire her when the slavers raided her research station. The Drachnid Empire's quantum drive technology lagged decades behind the Alliance's, and they were desperate to close the gap. What Vex didn't know was that Thalia had been carefully sabotaging his ships for months, making microscopic alterations that would culminate in today's maintenance. The quantum cascade she was programming wouldn't destroy the fleet. She wasn't a murderer, but it would disable their engines long enough for the Alliance to track their energy signature. Her fingers trembled slightly as she entered the final sequence. One mistake, and the cascade would trigger immediately, trapping her here. The neural collar around her neck felt heavier than usual, its threat of paralyzing pain a constant reminder of her captivity. "It's done," she announced, stepping back from the console. The efficiency improvements should be noticeable within the next few days. Vex nodded curtly. "Back to your cell. The guards will escort you." As 2 heavily armed Drachnids fell in beside her, Thalia fought to keep her expression neutral. In 48 hours, the cascade would begin. Either she'd be free, or she'd be dead. After 3 years of degradation and abuse, either outcome seemed preferable to another day of slavery. Her cell was barely large enough for the narrow cot and washing station, but she transformed it into a sanctuary of sorts. Mathematical formulas covered the walls, appearing to be the random scribblings of a broken mind. In reality, they were her plans, hiding in plain sight. That night, as the ship's lighting dimmed to simulate evening, Thalia lay on her cot and thought of home. Of the research campus on New Eden, where she'd spent her career pushing the boundaries of quantum physics. Of her colleagues, who she prayed had survived the raid. Of the simple freedom to walk under an open sky. A distant rumble shook the ship. Another vessel docking, probably. Thalia closed her eyes, reciting quantum equations to calm her nerves. Soon she'd know if her gamble had paid off. The next day passed in agonizing slowness. Vex summoned her twice more to check the engines, clearly suspicious of how smoothly they were running. Each time, Thalia maintained her facade of beaten submission while inwardly counting down the hours. She was dozing fitfully when the first alarms blared. Red emergency lighting flooded her cell as the ship's artificial gravity fluctuated. Through the walls she could hear the chaos erupting. Running footsteps, shouted orders, the whine of failing systems. The cascade had begun, hours earlier than planned. Thalia sat up, heart pounding. Had she miscalculated, or had something else triggered it? Her cell door slid open with a hydraulic hiss. Instead of Drachnid guards, a tall figure in Alliance combat armor stood in the doorway. The soldier's helmet retracted, revealing a human face with dark eyes and close-cropped black hair. "Dr. Thalia Voss?" the soldier asked, consulting a datapad. "I'm Commander Karen. We tracked unusual quantum signatures to this location. The entire Drachnid fleet is paralyzed." Thalia stood on shaking legs. "The neural collar," she managed. "They'll trigger it remotely." Karen stepped forward, pressing a device against the collar. There was a sharp click, and it fell away. For the first time in 3 years, Thalia felt truly able to breathe. "We need to move," Karen said, offering support as Thalia's knees threatened to buckle. "Can you walk?" She nodded, straightening her spine. "I can do more than walk. I know this ship's systems inside and out. I can help you take it down." A ghost of a smile crossed Karen's face. "That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. Welcome back to the Alliance, Doctor." As they moved swiftly through the corridors, alarms still blaring around them, Thalia felt something she hadn't dared feel in years: hope. She was finally free, but as she glanced at the determined soldier beside her, she sensed that her journey was far from over. The Alliance shuttle shuddered as another blast from the pursuing Drachnid vessels struck their shields. Thalia gripped her seat, knuckles white, as Commander Karen executed another evasive maneuver. "Their quantum drives are coming back online faster than expected," she called out, reading the sensor data. "Vex must have had redundancy systems I didn't know about. Can you strengthen our shields using what you learned from their technology?" Karen asked, not taking his eyes off the swirling starfield ahead. Thalia was already moving to the engineering console. 3 years of working on Drachnid systems had taught her their weaknesses and their strengths. Her fingers flew across the holographic interface, reconfiguring the shield harmonics. "Divert power from the aft sections," she instructed. "I'm going to create a quantum resonance barrier." The next hit barely rocked the ship. Karen let out a low whistle. "Impressive. But we're still outnumbered 4-1. "The nearest Alliance outpost is too far," Thalia said, scanning the star charts. "But I know somewhere closer we can hide." She transferred coordinates to Karen's console, a binary system with intense radiation that played havoc with sensors. She'd discovered it while studying stolen Alliance navigation data for Vex. Karen studied the coordinates for a moment before nodding. "Risky, but better than certain capture. Hold on." The shuttle lurched as he engaged the quantum drive. Stars blurred around them as they tore through spacetime. Behind them, the Drachnid ships attempted to follow, but their hastily repaired drives couldn't match the shuttle's maneuverability. As they emerged from quantum space, twin suns filled the view screen, one blue-white, one blood-red. The shuttle's radiation shields automatically engaged. "We can hide in the asteroid field between the stars," Thalia said. "The radiation will mask our energy signature." Karen guided them into the field of tumbling rocks, finding a stable orbit behind a particularly large asteroid. Once they were settled, he finally relaxed slightly in his seat. "Now we wait for the cavalry," he said, turning to face her. "Alliance Command has dispatched a battle group, but it'll take them 12 hours to reach us." Thalia nodded, suddenly exhausted as the adrenaline drained from her system. The events of the past few hours felt surreal. Had she really escaped? Or would she wake up back in her cell? "Thank you," she said softly, "for coming for me. Though I suspect it was more about denying the Drachnids my expertise than saving one slave." "The Alliance doesn't abandon its people," Karen replied firmly. "And your sabotage efforts probably saved countless lives by preventing the Drachnids from advancing their quantum technology. You're a hero, Dr. Voss." She laughed bitterly. "I don't feel like a hero. I feel—" She trailed off, unable to put into words the complex mix of relief, trauma, and uncertainty churning inside her. "You survived," Karen said simply. "That's more than heroic enough." Their conversation was interrupted by a proximity alert. 3 Drachnid ships had entered the system. "They're launching probes," Thalia reported, scanning the readouts. Standard search pattern. They can't detect us yet, but if one gets too close. We can't shoot them down without revealing our position, Karen mused. Ideas. Thelia studied the probe trajectories, mind racing. The radiation affects their guidance systems. If we can trigger a solar flare from the white dwarf, it would disable the probes and force the ships to retreat. And how exactly do we trigger a solar flare? Remember that quantum resonance barrier? Thalia allowed herself a small smile. With some modifications, we can use it to excite the star's magnetic field. It's dangerous, but possible. Karen considered her for a long moment. You're either brilliant or insane. Possibly both. Do it. Working together, they reconfigured the shuttle's systems. Thalia had never attempted anything like this before, but the theoretical principles were sound, she hoped. When everything was ready, she took a deep breath and initiated the sequence. The shuttle vibrated as it generated a focused quantum field. On the view screen, the white dwarf's surface began to ripple. Energy spike detected, Karen reported. The star's becoming unstable. Just a little more, Thalia muttered, making minute adjustments. Almost. The white dwarf erupted. A massive flare of plasma and radiation burst from its surface, washing over the asteroid field. The probes sparked and went dark, tumbling uselessly through space. Drachnid ships are retreating, Karen announced triumphantly. They can't maintain their shields against this level of radiation. Thalia sagged in relief. They were safe for now. But as she watched the ships disappear into quantum space, she knew Vex wouldn't give up easily. He'd lost too much face by letting her escape. Get some rest, Karen suggested gently. I'll keep watch. She wanted to protest, but exhaustion was overwhelming her. As she drifted off in her seat, she found herself studying her rescuer's profile. There was something comforting about his steady presence, his quiet competence. For the first time in years, Thalia felt truly safe. It was a dangerous feeling, one that could lead to even more dangerous thoughts. But as sleep claimed her, she decided that was a problem for tomorrow. The Alliance battle group arrived 10 hours later, but by then everything had changed. The stellar anomaly Thalia had created caught the attention of something far more dangerous than Drachnid warships. Multiple quantum signatures detected, Karen announced, jolting Thalia from her uneasy sleep. Too large to be Alliance vessels. The sensors revealed massive ships emerging from quantum space, harvester vessels. The mysterious race was rarely seen, but their reputation for collecting interesting phenomena and the beings who created them was infamous. They must have detected the artificial solar flare, Thalia said, fingers flying over the console. We need to move. Agreed, but our quantum drive is still recharging. The harvester ships deployed smaller craft that began systematically scanning the asteroid field. Their technology was far beyond even Alliance capabilities. It wouldn't take them long to find the shuttle. Thalia made a decision. The radiation belt between the binary stars. If we can reach it, the quantum interference might hide us. That's suicide, Karen objected. The radiation levels. I can modify the shields, Thalia insisted. Trust me. Their eyes met for a long moment. Finally, Karen nodded and engaged the engines. As they navigated through the asteroid field, Thalia rerouted every spare bit of power to the shields, incorporating the Drachnid quantum resonance modifications she'd developed. The radiation warning alarms grew steadily louder. Harvester vessels are launching more scouts, Karen reported tersely. 2 minutes until they reach our position. The space between the binary stars was a hellscape of competing gravitational forces and lethal radiation. The shuttle groaned as Karen guided it into the maelstrom. Shield integrity at 60%. Thalia called out, 55, 50. A harvester scout appeared directly ahead. For a moment, Thalia caught a glimpse of its bizarre organic mechanical design before Karen sent them into a spin to avoid its scanning beam. The maneuver brought them deeper into the radiation belt. Warning lights flashed across every console as the shuttle's systems began to fail. "We can't stay here long," Karen warned, "even with your modifications." "Look," Thalia pointed at the sensor display. The harvester vessels were pulling back, apparently unwilling to risk their ships in the extreme conditions. "Shield integrity critical," the computer announced. "Hull breach imminent." "Get us out of here," Thalia ordered, fighting to keep the failing shields online. They emerged from the radiation belt to find the harvesters retreating into quantum space. Moments later, the Alliance battle group arrived, too late for the action, but just in time for the rescue. Hours later, safely aboard the Alliance flagship, Thalia sat in the medical bay as doctors treated her radiation exposure. Karen hadn't left her side, despite his own injuries. "That was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever seen," he said, wincing as a medic treated his burns. "Why not both?" Thalia managed a weak smile. "Seems to be a theme with us." "Us." Karen raised an eyebrow. Thalia felt her face warm. "I meant, the situation, the escape, everything." "Right." His expression softened. "You know, when I volunteered for this rescue mission, I expected a traumatized scientist who'd need to be carried to safety. Instead, I found a woman who disabled an entire fleet and outmaneuvered the harvesters." Disappointed. Impressed. He reached over and squeezed her hand. The simple touch sent electricity through her that had nothing to do with radiation exposure. "Commander," a junior officer interrupted from the doorway. "Alliance Command is requesting your report." Karen stood reluctantly. "We'll talk later." Thalia nodded, watching him leave. Her heart felt oddly light despite everything they'd just survived. For the first time since her capture, she was thinking about the future rather than just survival. But a shadow crossed her thoughts. Vex was still out there, and the harvester's interest in her stellar manipulation technique posed a new threat. Her journey wasn't over, but at least now she wasn't facing it alone. She closed her eyes, finally allowing herself to rest properly. In her dreams, she saw not the horrors of her captivity, but the stars themselves, and a pair of steady dark eyes that promised to watch over her through whatever came next. The Alliance Council chamber fell silent as Thalia presented her evidence. Holographic displays showed the connection between Vex's slave operation and high-ranking Alliance officials who'd been secretly supplying him with technology. "These officials deliberately delayed the response to my kidnapping," she explained, her voice steady. "They wanted the Drachnids to advance their quantum technology, to spark a war they could profit from." Commander Karen stood beside her, his presence lending strength. The past month of investigating had brought them closer, their shared mission evolving into something deeper. The Council erupted in chaos as arrest orders were issued. But Thalia's warning came too late. Vex's fleet appeared in orbit, backed by corrupt Alliance ships. What followed was chaos. Thalia and Karen fought side by side through pitched space battles and close-quarters combat. She turned her quantum expertise into a weapon, using her understanding of Drachnid technology to disable their ships. The final confrontation with Vex came on his flagship's bridge. The Drachnid commander, desperate and cornered, revealed his ultimate plan: to sell Alliance quantum secrets to the harvesters in exchange for power beyond imagination. "You were never just a slave," he snarled at Thalia. "You were bait, drawing their attention with your stellar manipulation." The ensuing battle nearly cost both Thalia and Charon their lives, but together they prevailed. As Vex's conspiracy crumbled, the corrupt officials were exposed, and the threat of war receded. 1 year later, Thalia stood in her lab at the newly established Quantum Security Division, watching ships traverse the quantum corridor she'd designed. The system she'd developed during captivity, refined and perfected, now protected Alliance space from unauthorized quantum travel. "Ready to go?" Charon asked from the doorway. No longer just her protector, he now led the division's security forces, and in 2 hours he would become her husband. The ceremony was small, attended by colleagues who'd become family. Their vows spoke not just of love, but of partnership forged in adversity and triumph. As they danced at the reception, Thalia realized how far she'd come from that cell on Vex's ship. Her captivity had nearly broken her, but it had also revealed her strength. "What are you thinking?" Charon asked, noting her distant expression. "About chains," she replied, "and how some bonds enslave, while others set us free." He understood, as he always did. Their journey had transformed them both, from rescuer and victim to equals who had saved each other in different ways. That night, watching the binary stars from their new home, Thalia felt truly complete. She had turned her trauma into purpose, her fear into strength, and found love in the midst of darkness. The future held new challenges, the Harvesters remained a mystery, and threats to Alliance security never ceased. But whatever came next, she would face it not as a survivor, but as a warrior. Not as a slave, but as a wife. Not alone, but hand in hand with someone who saw her strength even when she doubted it herself. It wasn't the end of her story, just the beginning of a new chapter. And this time, she was writing it on her own terms.